It is June 6th, 2024. This is Roqe. Hi there. Welcome to episode 325 of Roqe. I'm Jian Gomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto, downtown Toronto, Canada. Salam Dustan Aziz Durud Bashama. Hope you are doing well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. خوش آمدید خانم ها و آقایون. Hi, smart Pegah.
Hello.
We're in a small room.
I know. It feels odd, but...
And Super P's in the room,
I
not
know,
on the other
that's
side
what I
of
was
the
saying. She's so close.
Yeah. When I said Khanum Ha, I was looking at both of you. Not just... Because I know that's plural.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
I know my Persian.
Farsi skills.
Hi, Super P.
Hello, sir.
And we have moved our Roqe epicenter, our Roqe hub, to a new studio, new space. Although the studio is not finished yet, so we're in
construction.
That's right. We're in a little room close to where that is in the same building, which will be our holding cell until our big space is ready. It's very exciting, and we've moved. For those of you listening in the Greater Toronto area, we've moved from North York to downtown east of Toronto. In the downtown east of Toronto, and where there's culture.
Yes, and water.
Compared to I start trashing North York now.
We've left all of 5
most
minutes.
Most of our Toronto listeners are probably in North York. Actually, it's where a lot of the Persians are.
I mean, they have shifted to Richmond Hill, Aurora, Newmarket.
There you go. And sometimes in the downtown.
And sometimes downtown.
Which is it's exciting to be down here. So Mubarak, Tabrik Migam, Bachai Roqe for our new studio and our new space, but we're still getting moved in here. We moved our stuff on Saturday, and we're slowly getting adjusted here. It was somewhat melancholy when you move. You know, that studio was the studio that we started Roqe in 4.5 years ago, or 4 years and 2 months ago. And there's a lot of memories there, and it was a great studio, so there was a tear shed.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, it's funny, when we were packing things up, I was starting to feel that, but it was like, oh, it's cool and it's exciting, and I was excited for the new space and all these things. But then when you posted that video, that's when it hit me.
With nothing left in there.
With nothing left in there. I was like, oh.
And as I said in the video, in the immortal words of the mediocre Sheryl Crow song, change will do you good.
Yes, it will.
Man, and here we are making a change. And this is a much bigger space we've come into here, the Roqe Media Culture Hub, where events will take place, we think. Let's see what happens. In the meantime, we've got show episode 325, and Yasmine Naghdi, I have to say, of all the impressive guests we've had on this program, who she is and what she does has got to be right up at the top, if not the top. A superstar of dance, the principal dancer of the Royal Ballet in England, in London, England, the storied ballet. I think she was the first Middle Eastern woman in the company at all.
Wow.
And has become the principal dancer. She's a superstar, and is she half Iranian? Super P, I think she's...
Yes, she's half Iranian.
All right, wow. Turn your mic up, Super P. Jesus. Ask her a question. See, this is what happens. You move to a new space and they get poru. They turn the microphone way up.
Baby?
Let's hear you.
Is it better?
No, now it's off.
Technical difficulties
Somewhere in between.
the new space.
Somewhere in between.
How's it right
That's
now?
That's good, yeah.
Third time's a charm.
So she's like half British, half Iranian, I think, or something.
No, I think she's... I think her mom is from Belgium and her dad is from Iran.
Right, but she's British because she grew up in England.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, Yasmine Naghdi, not only is she one of the greatest dancers in the world, and we'll talk about some of her new projects of dance, but she also has a new book out for young dancers called Ballet Besties. It's going to be a series, I think. and this is her first book, Yara's Chance to Dance. I think it's somewhat based on Yasmine's own story. And so it's a really cute book. I'm glad that she's put it out. I know it's already gotten a lot of attention, and thrilled to have her on the show.
Finally.
Well, we've had her on before.
That's the thing.
So did you forget that?
I did, actually.
Nice cover. Finally.
I did. I really did.
She's like literally one of our favorite guests ever. You forgot that she was on the show.
You know what? It's a new space. It's getting to me.
Smart Pegah. Your moniker not worthy of you at this, or you're not worthy of your moniker.
Hey, I'm allowed to slip every now and again.
Not if you're Smart Pegah. You just want to be Pegah. But if you're Smart Pegah, she didn't remember who's been on the show.
We are at episode like 325.
Yeah. It's hard to keep track of.
It's hard to keep track
arguably
of
the best guest we've ever had.
Yasmine
Naghdi. Is it Yasmin or Yasmine? Now I'm getting all. I can't remember.
Yasmin.
Yasmin, not Yasmine.
I don't think so.
What do we say in Persian?
Yasamin.
Yasamin. It's
Yasin,
definitely not that.
Or
Yasi.
Yeah.
No, I think it's Yasmin. Let's go with that. Yasmin. So, episode 325, a feature interview with Yasmine Naghdi coming up in just a moment. She will join us from London, England. Quite a week.
It is. And I feel like there's so many exciting things happening leading into the end of the week.
Yeah. Oh.
We've got a birthday coming up, I think.
Yes. Yes, it's my birthday coming up.
Yes, it is.
Let me tell you something about birthdays.
Okay.
For most of my life, I wouldn't tell anybody it's my birthday.
What?
I thought somehow it felt like not classy or uncool to say, hey, it's my birthday.
I'm super uncool.
No, hang on a second. I would never tell anybody it's my birthday. And also this predates everybody fucking having your birth date because it's on your Google alert or something, right? So I wouldn't tell anybody it's my birthday. Then my birthday would come and nobody would say anything because they don't know it's my birthday. Right. And I'd be upset and depressed because nobody said anything on my birthday. So a few years ago, like about, 5 or 6 years ago, I decided I'm going to start telling people it's my birthday, so that they are forced to engage at a minimum and mostly in that superficial act of, writing HBD on your Instagram, post or something like that, like the least amount of effort possible to get rid of the guilt that they've done nothing for my birthday. But still, it's nice to have people say happy birthday. So I'm outing myself that this weekend is in fact my birthday.
Yes.
June, baby, Gemini.
Oh, do you know how many Geminis I have around me? But
schizophrenic twins terrorizing you.
Hey, you said it, not me.
Yeah.
But happy early birthday.
Thank you.
I know it's coming up, but I thought we'd talk about it and let everyone know to wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I look forward to
celebrating and reading all the HBD
no one cares.
Comments.
Yeah, people are just like, oh, it's a birthday. I have to say happy birthday to this person.
I'm a big fan of celebrations. I mean, you've come to know this, and
yeah.
I'm very big into making sure that celebrations are celebrated.
But you don't go that big for your own birthday, do you?
I do.
Oh.
First of all, it's a whole month. It's not just
okay.
Because
so
I have
do.
like
all
different groups and different.
Tavalo. I thought you guys were at least going to sing to me or something.
Well, it's not your birthday yet.
Okay, all right. We'll wait till the weekend.
We'll get to the weekend.
Yasmine Naghdi coming up, also known as Yasmine Naghdi.
Or Yassi.
Not by herself, but by us. Yasmine Naghdi coming up. Before we do that, we're going to do a bit of a roundup. I'm guessing you want to talk about the fact that there are elections coming up in Iran.
Yes.
Something that is so important to so many Iranians. A bogus election that will account for nothing.
Nothing.
No change at all. What would you like to say about the Iran elections, Smart Pegah, formerly Smart Pegah, who can't remember which guests we have on the show?
Well, like you said, these elections don't mean a whole lot, considering we know that they are going to be bogus elections. But nonetheless, there have been some interesting news that have come out over the last week or so. First, I wanted to talk about former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad throwing his hat into the race.
Right. He's back.
He's back.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been seeing all sorts of really interesting videos of him, out in the bazaar and He's labeling himself as the man of the people, and
Sure.
just going and mingling with people.
Fresh
and,
from Twitter.
Yeah.
Ahmadinejad is back. Yeah.
So that was interesting. I mean, many are saying that he's strictly running to be disqualified because, of course, it's not enough that you name yourself a candidate. The Guardian Council has to actually approve your candidacy.
And he's been disqualified the last couple of times, right?
Many times.
Why
yes.
is that?
The Guardian Council is,
Like, why don't they like him anymore?
well, because he's a little bit of a loose cannon now, right?
Well,
like
yeah, sure, yeah.
So I don't think he's trustworthy.
I mean,
enough,
he
if
was
you
with
will.
the program when he was overseeing atrocities, along
Yes.
with Khomeini, etc. He's
But then thereafter,
he's a
he
black
kind
sheep.
of-
He's an outcast now.
That's
yeah.
right. So that was the first thing that I thought would be interesting to bring up. And then the second thing is the only female candidate to throw her hat in the race is Roqe Elahian,
Right.
who she was actually a former...
Surely a feminist who wants a return to 1970s free Iran.
Not at all, actually.
Yeah.
So she is, she's a physician, and she was a former member of the Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee. And funny that you should say or even refer to her as a feminist, because she's actually quite a bit of a hardliner. So, there's been interviews and things like that done. She's been asked about the woman life freedom movement, and gosh, these answers. I mean, at first I saw only female candidate, and, there's almost this like glimmer of hope, and then you see the response and you're like, nope, it's completely gone. But it's been an interesting lead up to this election. The election is on June 28th, and we're starting to see. And the last thing that I actually wanted to mention is, we've seen characters and one female candidate and things like that, but we haven't seen any young candidates at all.
No,
So
they're usually
everyone
bearded men. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is something that sparked some conversation. So a lot of Iranians
Why
are talking
isn't there
about this. Why isn't there
a 21-year-old celebrating
Well,
the Islamic Republic by
not
becoming
even
the president?
No, not even a 21-year-old, but everyone is above like 60.
Right.
So,
right.
what does that say about, I mean, we already know it's a bogus
They're more
election,
than
but
above 60. They're above, well, I guess Ahmadinejad would be probably in his 60s now.
I think he's in his 60s, yeah.
Not
So,
as old as some of the other guys.
Yes, exactly.
Can I just say something about the women candidate, though?
Yeah.
As you describe her, a hardliner. One of the things that was interesting to me about the Vezarat, the culture police, what do we call them? The Ershad. What was I saying?
Vezarat Ershad.
Oh, I was right. Okay, Vezarat Ershad. Yeah. So having not grown up in Iran, having known about the morality police, as they're known, but not seen them in practice, I just naturally assumed that they were men, rounding up women who are violating the law by not wearing the ridiculous hijab laws, et cetera, all of that stuff. And when a few years ago I started seeing the videos of that, actually there's these women who work for the morality police who round up the women, like who are just part of this whole thing.
Yeah, don't forget, it's the Islamic Republic, so the men can't touch women.
I mean,
right?
not that, the whole
not
thing
that it
is,
doesn't happen,
yeah,
don't get
but-
me wrong, but that's the justification.
Yeah, but that there's women with the program who are
Of course.
doing or overseeing this kind of stuff is disappointing.
Very
Okay.
much so.
So anyway, you were going to say so are there young candidates?
No,
or-
there isn't,
Oh.
not one. And, that's actually something that has been, has sparked some conversation to say, yes, we already know it's a bogus election. Yes, we already know that, really it's not going to change anything. But look at even the candidates who are running. Look, doesn't this tell you something about what these elections will be like?
Can I say something about the elections?
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's my show and we're talking about the elections. I hope that, first of all, lest anybody think otherwise, notwithstanding some of our keen listeners who are pro-Islamic Republic. I don't know who they are or where they are. Probably some spies listening or trolls. But lest anyone think otherwise, this is a bogus election. It doesn't matter who is going to be elected president. They're all going to be the same. The supreme leader will be overseeing them. They'll all be stooges. They're all part of the same, ideology that is governing this Islamic Republic. And so it's really an exercise in nonsense, and some PR that some of the world's press will buy. Is it a hardliner or not a hardliner? There's no such thing as these
Not a
categories
hardliner.
when it comes to the Islamic Republic. So it really doesn't matter that much, which is one of the reasons why Iranians, smart as they are, haven't been voting, have just been boycotting, giving up on voting for all these years, and even to the point of not expecting well-known people to call for votes and which candidate they should vote for, etc. Having said that, it is really important to emphasize that these are bogus elections, because there are still things going on in Iran, as ever, that do need our attention. And I assume you saw this report that came out, I think it was from the Center for Human Rights in Iran, about the latest stats on executions in Iran, where Iran has, it's been the epicenter of the death penalty, Iran being the Islamic Republic, I should say, the epicenter of the death penalty for many years now, the place in the world where this is happening. But now, last year, this is startling and horrific. The stats are that 3/4 of the recorded executions in the entire world in 2023 happened in the Islamic Republic. That is shameful and are horrific. And so that is what we would hope would be getting international attention, the world's attention, rather than a sham election.
Yeah, and actually on that same note, that number that you just mentioned, so the fact that 3/4 of those executions occurred in Iran, that's a 48% increase from the previous year. So not only are we the worst in the world, we're even almost doubling, even more than doubling. We're 48% increase from the previous year.
Right.
So it's just continuously getting worse.
And the previous year was the height of the mass
Exactly.
of the Women Life Freedom protests.
And that's when we were screaming at the top of our lungs.
And it just keeps getting worse. Yeah,
that's right. I actually read that same report that you're referring to, and one of the, all of it is horrible. I can't even say it's the worst parts. All of it is bad. But one thing I wanted to point out is that amongst the reported individuals who are now being prepared to be taken to execution or are moved to be then executed is an individual who's actually a minor. So there's a young man by the name of Arif Rasuni, who at the time of his sentencing was only 17 years old. And of course, this goes against every single international law in regards to anything and anything imaginable. But of course,
a contravention of international law to execute a minor.
Yeah. But of course, this is the Islamic Republic that we're talking about. And even in response to some of these groups bringing this to light and saying that, this is a violation, there's individuals who reported that, well, no, actually, according to the 2013 Islamic Penal Code, the age of criminal responsibility for boys is 15.
Oh,
and
great.
for girls, 9.
What?
Yeah.
Meaning you could execute them?
Yes.
Under the Islamic Republic
Penal
law.
Code.
It's actually it's Islamic law that when girls turn 9 and boys turn 15, they can get married, right?
Well, they're considered adults.
And
That's
they're
what
considered adult.
Every time Parisa speaks, I'm listening because her mic is so loud.
We'll get it right.
We'll get it right.
What about
Jesus,
that?
I really was like, what? Okay, I agree. I'd say,
this new office loves me.
There you go. That's good. That's better. Okay. You made your point. I got it. Stop yelling.
It was a great point.
Yeah, it was. It was actually. No, it was the mic was loud, and it's been turned down now. We're in a new studio. We're in a temporary studio. We're figuring it out. Yeah. Well, there you go. So, it's funny because I posted about this. Didn't get tons of. If I post something about my dog, thousands of likes. I post this, and it really doesn't get that much traction. I can't tell if it's because of fatigue or people just don't want to engage when it's about executions. People just anything to do with anything that's sad news or political, people are just trying to turn away from. I don't know.
I think it's always hard when we're talking about things that are this heavy, whether it's executions or the atrocities committed at the hands of the Islamic Republic or what's going on in other parts of the world. And there's no shortage of it. I mean, anytime you turn on the TV or read a headline or even on social media, we're seeing so much of it. And we've talked about this so many times before, but there definitely is an element of exhaustion when it comes to reading this type of news. And as someone who's Iranian, I think we've, I'll say personally, it almost feels like this has been the case nonstop for my whole life. I mean, it has been. Anytime I've ever talked about Iran with anyone, even if it's about something good, then it's followed quickly by some sort of horrible news coming out from, inside Iran and what the Islamic Republic is doing. So I understand. I just, we should still shed light on the fact that this is going on and not forget it in the midst of that exhaustion.
All right. Anything else in the roundup?
Well, I thought we'd end off on a lighter note. I saw something that I thought was really interesting. There's a new show in development for Netflix, which is actually going to chronicle the life of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi.
Oh, I saw this.
Did you see this?
I saw something about it, a new Shah series or something.
Yeah, it's actually going to be called The Shah, or The Last Shah, I think is what the name is.
Is it dramatic or is it a documentary?
No, it's like a dramatic series. It's
So somebody's playing the Shah?
Yes, and I don't know who.
Right.
None of that has been released yet, but apparently it's come from The Crown and shows like that have been doing so well that this is now going to be something similar, I guess. What I found out so far is that it's going to span 4 decades, starting from the World War II era when Mohammad Reza Pahlavi took the throne, up to and including the 1979 revolution and the U.S. embassy hostage crisis in Tehran. That's when it's going to end. There's also going to be a focus on Farah Pahlavi, and she's said to be portrayed, and her story is going to be portrayed kind of heroically and tragically at the same time, where they're going to chronicle the story of a wife, mother, and queen trying to save her husband, dynasty, and her homeland.
Well, how else would you? I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. I mean, all of this was just very exciting.
I can't wait. I mean, can you imagine that how Iranians are going to be, how we're going to consume this,
every Iranian
criticize
is going to be watching.
And is it made by Iranians or we don't know
No,
yet?
so the writer, I guess, is an individual by the name of Maury Rosemarin, and he owns a production company called Random Access Media. So he's not Iranian, from what I've seen so far.
You're saying Maury Rosemore doesn't sound like a Persian name?
Listen, I don't go by names anymore.
Right. It's true. Yeah.
But this Maury Rosemorin has previous experience, I guess, creating documentary series and things like that. And this is now in production and it's gotten the go-ahead. So it'll be really interesting to see that on Netflix. 2
things come to mind. One is that it's savvy. It's a savvy move by Netflix and the producers of it, because there's an audience for it. First of all,
Absolutely.
Iran is in the news, so in general, there's it's like I was thinking about how a series like Fauda must be getting so much more traction right now because of the Israel-Gaza situation. But also the monarchy draws a crowd, man, and particularly now, the Iranian monarchy. Like, I don't know what the level of interest would have been a couple of decades ago, but right now, anything, you see all these documentaries that are constantly pumped out, some of them better than others, about the last Shah, the final days of the Shah, the Reza Shah, Mohammad Reza Shah, and all of them get a lot of traction because there's a lot of fascination, there's interest with that period. There's a lot of Iranians who love that period, love the Shah, love the Mohammad Reza Pahlavi or Reza Shah, etc. And a lot of people are just curious in general. So you can see how this is going to it's going to draw a crowd.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, whether you agree or disagree with what took place during those 4 decades, or if you like or dislike the figures who are going to be portrayed, it doesn't matter. It's just, I think every Iranian is going to be glued to the TV and watching this series and definitely going to have things to say about it.
It's going to be, you remember when Tehran came out?
Yes, exactly.
And there was a lot of
love-hate relationships.
Disagreement, yeah. People would disagree about whether they thought it was, some people said, well made, but nonsense. Other people really liked it. Some people just saw it as great fun, and other people thought it did a disservice to Iranians, let alone even though it was critical of the regime, etc. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. What's it called? Does it have a name?
The Last Shah,
Oh,
I believe.
this is also The Last Shah. I think
This is
there's
also The
a
Last
couple of
Shah.
documentaries called The Last Shah.
Exactly.
All right, coming to a Netflix near you. Thank you, Smart Pegah,
Thank you.
for the roundup. We're going to get to our feature interview, but before we do that, a word of thanks. There it is. The thanks music. Today's episode is brought to you with the generous support of Chic Peak Catering. Chic Peak Catering, Pegah.
Chic Peak.
I know that you know Chic Peak
I
Catering.
do know Chic Peak Catering. They're my go-to caterers.
Really?
They are.
What is your favorite item in the Chic Peak Catering roster?
I would have to say côtelette. Their côtelette are amazing.
And their Master Khiar,
Everything.
their mini burgers, their samosas.
Oh, so good.
Chic Peak Catering has more than a decade of experience in culinary art. They are proud to cater the Greater Toronto area and the most memorable occasions and landmark events therein. Whether you need catering for a corporate event, a wedding, a private function, their catering consultants will work with you to design a seasonal, fresh, and customized menu to your taste and dietary requirements. As one of the best caterers in the Greater Toronto area, they are proud to cater for your events, large and small. Chic Peak Catering, chic like CHIC, pick like picking good caterers.
Good food.
Yeah. Chic Peak can be found on social media under that name. Chic Peak Catering, helping us with this episode. Thank you very much to Chic Peak Catering in Toronto. All right. Thank you, Smart Pegah, for the roundup. And let us get to our feature guest today. My returning guest today is a superstar British ballerina of Iranian descent with a Persian dad and a Belgian mom, and she has the distinction of being the first Persian ballerina and the only Middle Eastern ballerina to be in the Royal Ballet Company, let alone the principal of that storied company. Yasmine Naghdi was born and raised in London. She was on stage performing by the age of 8. She ended up getting into a Royal Ballet School and becoming a full-time company member at only 17 years old in 2010. In 2017, at 24 years of age, she became the principal dancer of the Royal Ballet in the UK. Her major roles include Odette Odile in Swan Lake, Aurora in The Sleeping Beauty, Giselle and Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, and the Sugar Plum Fairy and the Nutcracker, to name a few. She's performed worldwide in New York, Chicago, Washington, San Francisco, Tokyo, Osaka, Shanghai, Taiwan, Colombia, Bahamas, Bahrain, Brisbane, Moscow, Monaco, Madrid, Barcelona. Most recently, Yasmine is the co-writer of a children's book series called Ballet Besties. Ballet Besties, Yara's Chance to Dance. The first book in the series was just published last month, and right now, Yasmine Naghdi joins me from London, England. Hello.
Hello. What a nice introduction. Thank you.
Nice to have you back on the program.
It's good to be back. It's been a while, hasn't it? It was during the pandemic we were speaking.
It was 2 or 3 years ago, and you're still the principal. You're even more the principal now. You just get more impressive with time.
Few more years under my belt, more experience, more gray hairs,
Right. I'm not sure I see the gray hairs yet, but I appreciate the allusion to them. You just came back from performing in Singapore, I understand. How was that?
Yes, it was fantastic. It was a quick trip. It was kind of just 3 nights long. We took what we call a gala performance out there. So a gala performance is kind of a pick and mix of excerpts from various different ballets, and you'll usually get mixed dancers from around the world. We had a couple from Stuttgart, we had some from Norway, a little bit from everywhere, and we worked with Singapore Ballet out there as well. So I danced with some of the dancers there, and it's a really nice collaboration. You've got dancers from all around the world coming together and performing excerpts from the ballets that they're really good at doing. So I did the Rose Adage, which is this kind of pinnacle moment from the Sleeping Beauty with the four princes, and then a piece called Spring Waters that's really kind of explosive and exciting. I'm basically running and jumping into my partner's arms, and he's lifting me really high above his head. So it's very, very explosive and exciting. So we had a really good time there. Obviously, the time difference is quite extreme. We had an 8-hour jet lag. We arrived there in the morning. We were rehearsing within the evening, the following day performance, the next day performance, the following day fly back. So it was kind of in and out, perform, and back home.
And let me ask you something. I mean, if you're the principal in the Royal Ballet, you've done lots of big gigs. Honestly, I mean, would you still get fazed by doing this kind of an international ballet gala in Singapore, or do you really just go and have fun with it, especially since you're doing pieces that you already know?
Exactly. I think it is more the fun aspect for sure. When I go and I perform abroad, it does almost take the weight off in a way, because I don't know the stage, I don't know the audience, and I'm going there and just kind of putting my best version out there. I feel sometimes performing on our home stage at the Royal Opera House in London, I put more of a pressure on myself because it's our home audience. And I think there's something in the air in the Royal Opera House that kind of just adds more pressure.
But it's
it's
counterintuitive, isn't it? It's like Arsenal should have an easier time playing at the Emirates because it's their home stadium than going somewhere else. But you're saying it's actually more pressure when you're doing I mean, it is an esteemed royal company. That's part of it. But it seems like it'd be the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah, you think that way, but I think maybe it's just how my mind works. But I do feel there's more pressure. I remember last year I performed in Uzbekistan. I mean, I perform in amazing places around the world, and I performed Swan Lake there, and I remember thinking, gosh, like I put so much pressure on myself for Swan Lake when it's on our home stage, and I thought, you know what, use this opportunity to kind of just perform it without stress, without expectation. And I felt like I performed really well because you take that pressure off, and it's just an added element that you put a pressure on yourself with.
The Uzbeks listening are disappointed they didn't get the stressed out Yasmine. They got the chill, relaxed, that you phoned it in. You phoned it in Uzbekistan. Yeah. And when you get together in an international ballet gala like this, where you say there's, I guess we would call them ballet stars from different countries of the world. What's the culture amongst you? I mean, is it my only comparison, I guess, would be a music festival that I would have played at, that where everyone feels like they're equal to each other, but then like Snoop Dogg comes and everybody's like, oh, he's the big star's arrived. Is it like that? Do people defer to you because you're from such an important sort of and storied company?
Oh, very good question and nice comparison. I think
yes, you're Snoop Dogg in the comparison.
I'll take that. I'll take Snoop Dogg. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I'm me, so I think I'm not sensitive to that. I'm quite, I don't know, I kind of stay in my own lane, and I'm always so happy to meet dancers from around the world. I think we've got such common ground and common experiences. And I think the pressure's off in terms of, it's such a competitive art form, but I feel like when you're there with dancers from different companies, the competitive streak kind of is diluted in a way, because we're all doing our own thing. We've all got our place within our own company, and we're all there just kind of performing alongside each other. But I think there's possibly an element, I guess, when the big dog comes in and you're like, oh wow, that's so and so, and you can see the younger ones so intrigued and watching everyone's performance. And I think there's a really nice culture, I think, when it comes to these gala performances.
You don't eat at a fancier table than everybody else, like you're
no.
you have your own room and everybody's stuck together on the bus or something.
Yeah, I mean, there is a red carpet for me when I get off the bus.
As there should be. Speaking of where you see yourself at, I loved that you recently, and by the way, I want to ask you about this book, but just before we get there, you posted this video recently that that seems relatively benign on the surface of it, where you're practicing a jump, and you say, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And then I thought about it, and I thought, this is interesting. This is somebody who in her field has reached the pinnacle as a ballerina, and in terms of where you perform, the company that you're in, the principal status. And you're not a kid anymore. So it was kind of interesting, and I guess on a certain level heartening as well, to know that not only do you practice, it seems, regularly, which would make sense, but there's still things that you're trying to do that you're learning and growing at. Talk to me about that.
Totally. Growth will be until the end, I feel. Even my last day in my career, I'm sure I'll still, be striving for that growth and that improvement. And, we're perfectionists at heart. And, I've recently spoken to a psychologist, and she advised me, she said, don't say perfection, you're in pursuit of excellence. And that wording was really interesting to me, because it kind of changes the headspace. And I think, I will never watch a performance back and go, you know what? Nailed that. That was flawless. I will never, ever do that. There will always be something I feel could be better. This could have been tweaked better. This placement, the strength here, there will always be something to improve upon. And I feel like, as a musician, you probably feel the same thing. You can always do it better.
But I mean, coming from someone who knows very little about being a ballerina, but isn't jumping pretty fundamental? Shouldn't you have that figured out by now? What's the part of that Yasmine Naghdi is still working at?
I think with dance, things like turning and jumping, you can have more force on a Monday and then less force on a Wednesday, for example, and your calculation of the trajectory could be better one day and less so the next. Maybe you're more tired, maybe you didn't sleep well that night. So the variation of the way your body feels changes from day to day. And that's really fascinating, and it can be a blessing and a curse at the same time. You can have one day where you're feeling really strong and everything goes according to plan, and the next day you can have a day where you just feel out of body or a bit more swollen or more fatigued. And those are the factors that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And there can be a day where I wake up and I have a really hard performance that night, and I think, oh goodness, I feel like I'm coming down with a cold,
right,
but I'm gonna need to push through this performance. I actually had it once when we went to Madrid on tour, and I was performing Swan Lake, and there are the famous 32 fouettes that every spectator waits for at the end of the third act. And it's basically 32 spins on one leg using the other leg, and you get very, very dizzy, and the goal is to stay on the spot. But of course, everything you do has to be so mathematical. How long you sustain the up for, where you take the leg, whether it's overcrossed or open to open, it can change where that kind of where your axis is. So it's the same with the jump. So I wanted to demonstrate, because I want to, I don't want to put out there that everything is easy and everything is perfect. No, there will be days where things don't work, because you're a human being. We're not robots. We can't program what we're going to do and know that we're going to do it flawlessly. And this is something that I'm working on currently, because on the 24th of April, I have a live streamed cinema performance of Swan Lake coming up. So that is a hurdle in itself, because not only is a performance to 3,000 people, with its pressures, but once you open that out to the millions of people that will watch this filmed performance, and it should be live, but obviously to people in various time zones, it will be shown at a later stage. It adds a much, much bigger picture to it, and everything I do, I will want to perform flawlessly, because it's filmed. And it's kind of, I feel like it's the part of me that will become immortal. It stays there, for years to come.
Sure.
So that adds a lot of pressure. So, I'm kind of preparing for that and trying to keep my mind calm and focus on the moment, not the bigger picture. So it's a challenge in itself.
And people still really love Swan Lake, don't they? I mean, you just mentioned going to Uzbekistan, going to Madrid, where you did Swan Lake in both of them. I remember being a kid, and my parents taking us to, we would go to the ballet a couple times a year. You got the Nutcracker, obviously, was the Christmas one. And then it was always Swan Lake. I mean, that was and that's still, is that just what you're known for, or is that still the ballet that people want to see?
I think it's a classic. Swan Lake is a classic. When you ask any child, what ballets have you heard of? Most of the time they will say something like Swan Lake or the Nutcracker or Romeo and Juliet, for example. There are also alternative ballets that aren't as famous, but I think Swan Lake, it is one of the older ballets, and it's been done for years, and it's timeless in a way, and various choreographers have done contemporary versions of Swan Lake as well. There's Matthew Bourne that's done an all-male Swan Lake that's very interesting. So I think it's timeless and it's a classic, but it's not to everyone's taste. It's supremely classical.
Yes.
So I think it's a ballet that is also extremely demanding, and for any ballerina, it is one of the hardest roles because you do the dual role of Odette and Odile.
Yes.
So you're actually doing two parts within that. And in some versions, they make one ballerina do the white and one ballerina do the black swan. So that's something else to know.
Why did you feel inspired to go to a psychologist?
I think with any sports person, if you look at tennis players, gymnasts, sports psychology is very, very interesting. And I think we've made such a jump and an evolution in the ballet world as well, that we're aligning ourselves with sports people, because fundamentally ballet is an art. It's an art form. However, there's a huge amount of sport involved.
Right.
And it's incredibly athletic. And in 21st century, we're now pushing our bodies far beyond what the dancers way back when were doing, in terms of jump height, in terms of stamina, in terms of turn endurance, everything, you name it. And there's far more insight that's gone into the world of dance as well, to an elite degree. So for example, sports nutrition is so fundamental. And, I've spoken to you about, how much I love cooking, etc. But sports nutrition is so interesting because there's a window in which your body optimizes the food that you intake. It's kind of a 15-minute after exercise. With something, if I'm doing a difficult role, I'll take a protein shake within 15 minutes of my dancing because my metabolism is at its peak, and it will metabolize the protein that I take that's optimal for recovery. So that's something very interesting. And then obviously fueling the body well, your body is your temple. What you put in, you get out. So if I'm eating crisps and burgers and pizza, don't get me wrong, I do. But let's say before a performance, I'm not going to get the best.
But was it a sports psychologist then?
So the sports psychologist comes in because it really helps to have someone to speak to about honing in on a focus. So for example, I was speaking about the cinema broadcast. That's a very broad focus. And to think about rehearsing every day for that show doesn't have the right intention. I have to find a way to be like in the here and now. Today is Friday. I'm doing my Friday rehearsal. Tomorrow, is another day. And you work in a better way that way, to focus on the now rather than the bigger picture, if that makes sense.
Well, also, it sounds like, just based on chatting, even in this interview, you've tipped the hat to how the pressure that you put on yourself to, you said you used the word perfectionism. Your psychologist corrected you, but you also said you can't even look at a performance of your own without finding the flaws in it. You would never look at it and go, that was great. That's some good fodder for a therapy session, right? I would imagine you'd have to bring.
I'm always trying to be better, and I think the COVID pandemic gave me some time to reflect as well, because in pursuit of this excellence and this kind of perfectionism trait, it's a tipping point, because you can be striving to be better and, put a pressure on yourself to improve and be stronger and faster, etc. But at the same time, if you're making yourself miserable because you're always disappointed with what you're doing, then why do it in the first place? Life's too short, right? So I have to also find a way to balance that. perfectionism trait and find ways to be happy with what I'm doing. Okay, so I wobbled there. Let's move on because this was really
Do you
good.
project your perfectionism on others? I mean, I know you recently got married. Congratulations. Or, I mean, last year, but since the last time we spoke, do you project that onto your husband? Does he have to be perfect as well?
No, no. I think I'm far more relaxed at home as normal Yasmin. But I would say maybe I bring the perfectionism in terms of I like the flat to be organized. I like it to be clean. You know, after cooking, everything has to be away. I don't like leaving things out. So
Ah,
I
that's
like
great.
order.
I love
And
that.
that's how I function. You know, if it's messy and it's, then I'm kind of something it doesn't feel right. Like the energy needs to be calm
Yeah,
around
yeah,
me.
yeah. I'm exactly the same way, and people find it very annoying. So hopefully your husband can handle that. How did your Persian dad cope with you marrying a non-Iranian, or was that at this point he's okay?
I think he was happy, to be honest.
Wow. Well, okay.
No, I mean, honestly, he would have been happy whoever, as long as, the guy made me happy. But I think, Ricardo, as soon as they met him, they loved him. And to be honest, I feel he's got a lot of Iranian traits, actually. So they get along really well. I feel like getting to know Italians as well. I think Italians and Iranians have a lot of
Yeah,
similarities in terms of, family
yeah.
values, that food is really important and it kind of brings everyone together. These kind of cultural things that are really fundamental in family life as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities in culture.
that's lovely. Congratulations again. Okay, let me ask you about Ballet Besties. So, what was the precipitant? What was the moment? What was the eureka moment where Yasmine Naghdi says, "I want to be involved in writing a children's book series about ballet"?
The eureka moment came out of the pandemic, like most things have. But I worked with a school of children in India. I had a ballet school contact me whether I would be willing to teach their students. So I worked with them, and it really touched me how moved they all were to work with me, even though it was on Zoom, to see all these children in India, coming from tricky backgrounds. And I thought, oh wow, I really want to represent these children, and I mean all children for that matter, but I feel like I wanted children to feel represented no
Hmm.
matter what their background was as well. So I wanted to have, yeah, all the we've got 5 characters. We've got Indu, Yara, Charlie, Dante, and Momoka, and they all come from different backgrounds, and each book focuses on a different child. So the idea grew from working with this children's ballet
Hmm.
school in India, and I then reached out to an Indian author of children's books as well. And when I reached out to her, she told her agent, and her agent went, "No way, Yasmine Nagdi! Oh my god, I love her! I love her!"
Wow.
She knew of me. She'd watched several of my shows. She was like, "We have to do this collaboration." So yeah, it was great. It was very smooth. It was a lovely. We had a lovely progress throughout. We're currently writing the third book. We've got 4 altogether. Um,
And the
so
undertone, the pretext is that Ballet Besties is breaking down the traditional idea of what a ballet dancer looks like. So, as you say, that there are characters of all ages and genders and ethnicities and body sizes. Why was that so important to the accessibility? I mean, I know we live in an era where it feels like we have to peddle that message, but tell me personally why that was so important to you.
I think when I was growing up, I didn't have an Iranian ballerina that I could kind of idolize in a way. And and I think that's that. So I put a little bit of myself in there as well, because I get so many people that write to me from Iran saying, thank you so much for what you're doing. We feel you're representing us
Hmm.
in a world that we kind of struggle with. So I felt privileged to kind of be in that position to represent Iranian people in a
Hmm.
way, I
Hmm.
guess.
Yeah. I mean, is it in terms of the traditional idea of what a ballet dancer looks like, you do look like the traditional idea to a certain extent, though, don't you? I mean, you're, when we talk about different body sizes, et cetera, how the message is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, and laudable. But is it realistic? Do we see ballet companies expressing that kind of diversity at the top levels?
I think with this book, what I wanted to explore is I don't want to put a message out there to say, I would like children to do ballet to a professional level. I think if a child wants to do it to a professional level, fantastic. And it's a long, hard road, but it's a beautiful one when you can get there. But with this book, I wanted to say that dance is for everyone to enjoy. It's a form of exercise, it's a form of an outlet of emotion, of expression, and it's really creative and wonderful. And I was hearing on the news more and more that there were schools around the country taking away dance from a school's curriculum. So I felt sad that I thought maybe children would grow up to be less creative. So,
I feel like you really accomplished that. I really felt like that message of it made me want to be a kid and do ballet again, because like, I think it's Charlie here is a little football player guy, and he's passionate about the ballet. Like, all of them are come from sort of different walks of life, and it does mess with the notion that ballet was this thing that's only for these elite girls to do, and the one lucky guy who happens to be physically able, and that type of thing. It's got a real accessibility message. I felt like I saw you in there, because Yara is passionate about ballet from a young age, and her mom is Belgian, which was conspicuous. One of the things with her is that her parents have this mantra that says school, then ballet. And I think a lot of Iranians listening will understand that. Their parents who would say, school and then do your music, or become a doctor and then you can, play baseball or something. But
exactly.
But I also think, it's for someone who's at the outstanding level that you are, at some point, whether it is ballet or baseball or bass playing, at some point, working at that skill, even at a young age, does have to supplant the schooling. So, I mean, if you're going to be as good as you have become, and I'm sure your parents and any people around the world are so proud of you, you can't just, be doing it as a sideline until you're 25 or something. So if parents come to you and say, my kid really loves ballet, but I want them to get an education and do their schooling, which I think a lot of Iranian parents might, what would you say?
I would say that it is possible, but it might not be possible kind of as they're young and going through that training, because obviously if you want to do anything at a top level, there is sacrifice involved. But I think it's possible to do it kind of later, if you see what I mean. So I had a friend, a colleague within the company, and she would do her studies alongside the ballet. So it is tough. You come home, all you want to do is put your feet up and watch Netflix, but she would then carry on and study, and I've done that myself to a degree as well, with things like studying about nutrition and doing my own research with sports psychology, and also learning another language, and then writing these books as well. So you can make time, you just have to want to do it.
I figure you're sort of the case where you and thanks to your parents, you really did focus from a young age on ballet, didn't you? Even though you were doing the schooling. I mean, you wouldn't be who you are if your parents had said, no, get an engineering degree first, right?
Exactly. I mean, at first it was very much the dynamic. My father was saying, no, but we have no guarantee that she's gonna make it. And, they didn't know enough about ballet to understand that you could do it as a profession and be successful at it. But you just have no guarantee when you're looking at your 11-year-old, you have no idea. So of course he was more, no, she has to go to university, etc. Whereas my mother was more of the thought process of, let her follow her dream. And if it doesn't work out, we we'll put her back in school and she'll have to find her way.
The villain in the book, if there is one, wants to close down the ballet school, and Yara and her friends love the school so much, and so this villain, Dame Audrey,
Yeah, Dame Clogston Wilmot, or Dame Audrey, yeah.
right. She. It turns out she's a former principal dancer herself who has her career. Spoiler alert: has her career ruined by injury, and something that also has happened to her son, who goes into ballet as well. Is that a cautionary tale on some level?
I think I know a lot of people who have gone through that. I've worked with a lot of ballet teachers who had to stop prematurely because of injury. Unfortunately, injury is part of this career path, whether you like it or not. We're doing something that's all consuming, that's very intense on the body. It's quite unnatural if you think about it. So it's part of the process, it's part of the journey, and you can be lucky and you can overcome it with strength and improvement. But they say every injury you have is like a scar that remains. So either you can kind of build above it and improve and get stronger, or it can get the better of you depending on how severe the injury is. So with Dame Audrey, she was kind of modeled on the idea of someone who has gone through that injury, who didn't make it back and is bitter because of it. And it's something that happens, But at the same time, we show that Yara convinces her to kind of bring herself back into it, and she finds the love for it again, and she kind of resolves her feelings towards it. So I think.
Well, I didn't want to give away the ending, but
yeah. We keep spoiling it here, but I also wanted to put the message out there that children can be powerful enough to convince adults, to change as well, the better.
But Yasmine, in terms of how injury can really, like you say, like an athlete, like a football player, it can derail your career. How aware or concerned are you about that in your daily life, or how much responsibility do you have to sign a contract with the ballet where you can't play pickup football because you might get injured? Is that something you worry about? Are you very careful when you're climbing the stairs or something, so that nothing happens to you?
I think they like to encourage us to obviously just be smart, make smart choices. Obviously don't go skiing because there's a high risk of injury with that, for example, horse riding. So I think they encourage us to avoid doing any kind of contact sports because of obvious reasons. But that doesn't stop the guys playing a football game every so often. The problem is when they come back and say, oh, I can't do my show because I've injured my ankle because I was playing football on the weekend. That's irresponsible. Right. So I'd say most people are quite savvy and make sure that they don't do anything that's risky. But
so you won't go skiing?
No, although I really want to. That's going to be the first thing I do when I retire, is get back on skis. I used to love skiing. Right. But for right now, no. But the funny thing was, I've been really fortunate to not be plagued with injury. Of course, we call them niggles, like little things here and there, a bit of a swollen ankle here or a hip that's a bit painful. But I've not had anything that's taken me out for a long time, other than when I was on holiday and I injured myself whilst on a hike. And I really hurt my ankle. I had a really bad sprain. It blew up to the size of a grapefruit pretty much. And I was out for a few months. So that was don't go on holiday.
Right. Avoid holidays. Great. Exactly. Coming from the perfectionist girl. That makes sense. I know I can't keep you forever. I'll just finish up with a couple of questions. And more about what the book, you doing this book made me think about you. And think about, on some level, even the way you're speaking now about the school in India, and it's evidence that you see yourself increasingly as a mentor, and as you should. I mean, you have a lot to teach young people especially who want to go into your field. And this must be an interesting transition for you, I was thinking, because you were for many years the young prodigy, and now you're the star in the prime, but you have some experience under your belt. Do you feel like you've changed in the way you see yourself?
Oh, good question. I would say definitely yes. I really do feel the growth over time, and I always I have thought about kind of going into mentorship further down the line. My big dream and goal would be to have an organization in which we would have support for children in training, no matter what field, be it tennis or golf or skiing or ballet, whatever, but to have an organization that can support children with the nutrition, with the psychology, with the training, with the recovery, with the school, with everything, providing a more all-rounded student in whatever they're doing. I would love to have something like that, because I think children need to be nurtured in the right way. I think, ballet training is tough, and it has to continue to be tough, because we can't have a soft approach. You
Mm-hmm.
have to understand that a lot of sacrifice has to be made, and it's hard. No, nothing worth having comes easy, and there's a reason why that saying has stuck. So I would like to do something like that further down the line.
And before I let you go, I mean, do you, um, I don't want to be indelicate in the way I ask this, but I mean, you are in your prime now, but you're in your 30s, your early 30s. I did Google how old the principal dancers in prominent ballet companies get, and I mean, it usually by 35 or there was a story in the New York Times 3 or 4 years ago about Stella Abrera, who was the principal dancer of the American Ballet Theater at the age of 41, and she joked that it took a very specific physical regimen and lots of Advil to continue doing what she's doing. Do you think about your future, given that what you do is not something that people can do until they're 80 years old, at least as a principal?
Exactly. No, I'm very, very aware of that. I think, ballet is an art form for the young. I think you kind of dance at your peak and your best. And I would say at the age of 32 now, I'm considered a kind of middle-aged in my career. And I'm fine with that.
Are
I'm
you
very,
are you fine with that, or do you kind of, does it, I don't know, concern you somehow?
I think I'm very realistic. I understand that it's not forever. And I'm really grateful that I have a very balanced home life with a husband that's not a dancer as well. It just gives me perspective on life. I understand that there is an end to this career. And I believe that I will be fine when that day comes. I believe I will be fine. And I think that's a very beautiful place to be, because I know a lot of people that struggle with the end
Yeah.
drawing nearer. And I don't think you want to look back at your career with that bitterness and holding on to that. I hope that I can look back on my career with joy and happiness, knowing that I fulfilled a passion and I got the most out of those years. But I think right now I want to enjoy it to the fullest. I want to approach my roles with intelligence. I'm really blessed to not have aches and pains, and I have a body that can take the demands. I don't yet feel I'm on the decline. I feel like I'm still kind of on my way up. And the best years lie ahead. So I want to max out on that. I want to make the most of that before the next steps of my life. And in my head, I think 40, 41 is completely achievable. I think one needs to be clever in terms of the repertoire, the ballets that we dance,
Hmm.
because doing the classics, we call them, with the tutus, and they're very exposed and they're very difficult. Maybe those will need to be taken away, and more of the contemporary, the narrative ballets allow more artistry rather than the technique to be the prime focus. So I think there will be a shift in terms of the ballets that I will do when I feel like my body's changed, etc., and I'm no longer able to perform at the level that I am now, just to give an example.
What a great answer. Almost like you've thought about this before.
You know me.
It is always, and I really mean this, it's always an inspiration to talk to you. I really get inspired by who you are and what you've done, and your approach to life. And you're right. The best surely can lie ahead, and although I do notice in that exhaustive list of places that you've performed around the world, there was no Canadian cities, and after a while, it tends to become like a snubbing. It's like you're ignoring the colonies. You don't want to come to Canada. It's more glamorous to go to Uzbekistan, but we're here too at some point.
That's true. I did actually get a request to perform in Canada, but it clashed with another one. So nearly went to Canada.
Well, I'll come and see you in London. That's for sure. Yasmine, congratulations on the book and the series of them. And it is a great pleasure always to talk to you. Do take care.
Thanks, Jian. Nice to speak to you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yasmine Naghdi in London, England. This is full time for Roqe for today. Remember, for all things Roqe related, you can go to roqemedia.com. Roqemedia.com, the hub of all things Roqe related. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Super Parisa, Smart Pegah, Savvy Roham, Talented Anahita, Methodical Kabe, and Bearded Omid. Thank you to all of you out there supporting us and sharing our content. Do subscribe if you haven't done so already. Find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. See you next week. And in the meantime, as ever, Mizun Bashin.